Now, for a further take on the upcoming high-stakes summit between President Trump and Kim Jong-un, we're joined by Dr. James Kim, a research fellow from the Asan Institute for Policy Studies, and our Arirang correspondent Kim Minji is here with us as well again. Thank you both for coming here today.
Thanks for having me, Chang.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we've been following Minji, Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump's movements over the last couple of hours, but it seems like there's been not much change, and it seems like they're preparing for their meeting later tonight. What's the latest on their movements?
Well, for now, we're just a couple of hours away from the expected one-on-one between U.S. President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. So it's likely they will be staying low-key and possibly preparing for what to talk about and the summit agenda for tomorrow as well. But if we give you a recap of what happened this morning, President Trump met with some Vietnamese officials. He met with Vietnam's President Nguyen Phu Trong this morning at the presidential palace. Here they exchanged praise. President Trump thanked the Vietnamese leader for hosting this event, and he said that Vietnam is a good example for North Korea to follow on the path of economic development. Now, here the two sides also sealed a number of deals between their two airline industries. Now, if I give you some detail there, Vietnam's Bamboo Airways agreed to buy 10 Dreamliners from the U.S. manufacturer Boeing, and Vietnam Airlines and Sabre signed a MOU on providing technology solutions.
Dr. Kim, I want to ask you about what you think of Donald Trump's busy schedule this morning, whereas Kim Jong-un has been relatively quiet, staying in his hotel. Donald Trump has been out about meeting with Vietnamese officials and even signing a trade deal.
Right. Domestically, I think we have to understand that Donald Trump is under siege at the moment. Miller report was supposed to come out this week. There's going to be a lot of talk around Washington about that report, if it is released or it isn't released. He needs to have a win at this visit, and whatever he could get, not only from North Korea, but if he could get something else from Vietnam on top of that, it's something that he could come back to Washington to talk to, his constituents and his base about what he's been able to deliver at this trip. So it's good that he's keeping himself busy. I think he wants to have a very fruitful summit here and a fruitful visit. That also means that there's hope for a possible, deal that is meaningful for not only the United States, but for the world. So I think we could, even though there's some worrying signs and trends, I think we could hold out hope that this is clearly a motivated president here that's in Hanoi trying to get something done.
You say worrying signs and trends. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, there's all this talk about whether or not this is going to be a big deal or a small deal. I think the key for me is whether this is going to be a meaningful deal. But one of the indicators, or a lot of the analysts are looking at to determine whether or not this is going to result in a big deal or a small deal, are the sort of the initial signs that are coming out, and talking points. The spins that the president has been involved in, Secretary Pompeo, along with Steve Biegun, has been involved in for the past week or so, talking about what to expect in this summit. President Trump signaling a possibility here that, that he's not going to get any big deal on denuclearization from this one meeting. That denuclearization for him is a long game, not something that he's looking to achieve overnight. Suggests that there's a potential there that we're not going to get a big deal coming out of this meeting, that this is going to be a part of a long process. He's also signaled the potential here, without even having done the second summit, for another summit after the second summit. So what this all suggests is that we're probably not going to get a comprehensive deal coming out of this summit, but more likely that we're going to get some kind of a smaller deal that is a lead up to many more deals or bigger deal later on. In any case, he's tempering expectations if you listen to what he's saying very carefully. But at the same time, he does say that there's a potential here for a very meaningful outcome, that he sees a good story coming out of this meeting. So one of the nice stories is obviously more jobs and business for the American workers. And certainly he could talk about that with whatever these deals are with the Vietnamese. facilities. But the other thing would be, some kind of meaningful deal on the denuclearization front, even though it's not quite what the Americans were looking for as they went into this. So overall, you have a tempered expectation, but to some extent have a very positive view that this is one among many steps that's going to come on a peace deal with North Korea and a comprehensive denuclearization.
Dr. Kim, you've been talking about a big deal and small deal, but Minji, can you explain to us a little bit about what we mean by big deal and small deal? There's no clear definition, is there?
Of course, so both leaders have been under pressure to come up with something more than what they did in Singapore last year. Many critics have said it lacks detail and it just reaffirmed their commitments to denuclearization. Now, a small deal at this point, many see it as the dismantling of ICBMs and possibly the shutting down of the Yongbyon nuclear test site, which North Korea suggested back in its summit with President Moon in September last year. And in exchange for that, North Korea could possibly get more economic assistance or humanitarian assistance and possibly some way of improving bilateral ties between North Korea and the U.S. Now, a big deal would be complete denuclearization or full final verified denuclearization, which will involve getting rid of all nuclear-related facilities and verifying this, getting international inspectors to come in and check. And in exchange then, of course, would come the easing or lifting of sanctions, possibly a peace treaty, and the improvement of ties between the two. So some are saying we should try to at least reach a middle deal, which would involve the shutting down of the Yongbyon nuclear site, as well as coming up with a timeline that would see North Korea's take concrete steps towards denuclearization down the line.
Dr. Kim, you've already said that you don't expect full denuclearization deal, this big deal to come up, but you've talked about something meaningful. I mean, would the shutting down of Yongbyon facility be meaningful, and is that a realistic target for this summit?
Right. So I think Minji did a really good, comprehensive accounting of what are some of the issues that might come up in the meetings tomorrow. When Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump gets down to business. One of the issues is Yongbyon. Yongbyon, though, there's more to Yongbyon than just Yongbyon, meaning that it's not a one-side issue. We have to take Yongbyon as a package. Within Yongbyon, there's a plutonium production facility as well as a highly enriched uranium facility. So the facility that the Americans are interested in getting access to is the uranium enrichment facility within Yongbyon. It is not a comprehensive accounting of all uranium enrichment facilities because the Americans have been asking for a full list of all the other facilities where North Korea may be producing or enriching uranium. But it is one that the North Koreans have revealed in the past, and it's one that the Americans know exists, and everybody else does as well. But the question here is whether or not North Korea is going to allow, a big deal will involve a complete access to, first of all, a full accounting of all the uranium enrichment facilities, along with the plutonium production facilities, including Yongbyon. And then a full access of inspection of those facilities. It's likely that a small deal will include something that includes only the plutonium facilities within Yongbyon, without full access to all the other facilities in Yongbyon. Then it sounds like North Korea has made some move on Yongbyon, but it's not what the Americans were really interested in going after. So it would be a small deal. And if you add on top of that an ICBM program, complete, dismantlement of the ICBMs, then it would be sort of an added incentive for the Americans to do something on the side, perhaps end of war declaration. But the Americans have been holding out for a full access to Yongbyon. This is one step short of what they were after in the first Singapore meeting, which was a full accounting of all facilities, all the plutonium and uranium enrichment facilities. And then a talk about how to go about getting access and inspection of those facilities and sites. So we're still a long way off if we're still talking about Yongbyon, and we're cutting Yongbyon into different pieces and parts here. And so the question the Korean media has been sort of focused on is it going to be the whole Yongbyon plus something else, plus alpha? And what is that alpha? It's these other facilities. A smaller deal would be a partial access to Yongbyon that is restricted to the plutonium producing facilities. And then on top of that, you know, maybe Dongchangli and Punggye-ri access, these test sites that they've been destroyed. So it's nothing that is new here for the Americans. So the question is, if the North Koreans offer that, what do the Americans have to offer in return? And a bad deal would be something where the Americans give out some kind of economic incentive, some partial relief of sanctions for ICBM and plutonium, partial access to Yongbyon. But a smaller deal would be something short of that, something that doesn't go towards any sanctions relief, but more humanitarian, as Minji pointed out, humanitarian assistance, opening up liaison offices for both the U.S. and North Korea, having more cultural and people-to-people exchanges. These are some ideas that have been floated around out there. So that would be a more realistic outcome for this summit. But you never know what these two leaders might be able to accomplish tomorrow. So we'll hold out hope. President Trump clearly seems very motivated. And he's going out there and trying to get as much done as possible during this trip. And that shows that he wants to be productive here. And those are good signs.
You say, you know, obviously Trump is unlikely very much, you know, it would be a bad deal if Trump gives economic incentives. But Minji, let me turn to what South Korea has been doing, because President Moon had a phone conversation with Trump where he basically seemed to, well, according to the Blue House reports, that offered South Korea as a way out to offer some sort of a loophole to offer North Korea some economic sanctions lifting.
Yeah, so South Korea has high expectations, of course, for the upcoming summit between North Korea and the U.S. because it wants to expedite economic cooperation between the two Koreas, and it's obviously keeping close tabs on the situation. And it has also dispatched Special Envoy Lee Do-hun to Hanoi. Now, President Moon Jae-in is hoping that the summit will help advance Seoul's plans to reconnect rail and road links with North Korea, and possibly later down the line reopen the Kaesong Industrial Complex. And last week, in a phone conversation with President Trump, Moon Jae-in suggested that we could ease the burden on the U.S. by offering concessions through inter-Korean economic projects. And it's also, so South Korea's presidential office is also reviewing the possibility of visiting the U.S. or holding an additional phone call with President Donald Trump. So we'll have to see how those go.
Ease the burden, that's, I think, a key quote there. What do you think, Dr. Kim, about this offer from President Moon Jae-in to use South Korea's inter-Korean cooperation with North Korea as a sort of incentive to North Korea?
So going back a little bit, before I answer that question, the first question is sanctions relief, a bad deal? No, it's not. If we get North Korea to come up with a full list in exchange for sanctions relief, that would be a fantastic deal. That would be a really big deal. So I'm holding out for that. I hope we can get that, but we don't know. As far as South Korea's willingness to come out and be an active participant for inter-Korean development and economic development in North Korea, this is something that I think President Moon wanted to give to as an option for President Trump as he goes in thinking about what he could offer Kim Jong-un and North Korea. I think what President Moon wanted to say there was, you don't have to take on the full burden here. South Korea is willing to take on that burden. So you've got that additional chip that you can play with in this negotiation. And so it gives President Trump a little bit more leverage going into this. And I think that was the intention here.
we're getting reports that North Korean delegates are visiting the Haipong industrial zone. I mean, do you have any more information, Minji?
So reporters on the ground said a team of North Korean officials had left the hotel complex this morning amid speculation that they would travel to the industrial port city of Haiphong, which is confirmed to be correct. Now, the delegations included Lee Soo-yong, who is in charge of international affairs at the Workers' Party of Korea, and Oh Soo-young, who is known to be in charge of handling economic affairs for the North Korean regime. Now, here, Haiphong is home to LG Electronics, as well as the factory of VinFast, which is the Vietnam's first automotive manufacturer. So here, it could shed light on Vietnam's economic model for development, which North Korea has seemingly wanted to learn. And we're also hearing that Kim Jong-un himself could possibly make a visit to these sites, possibly during his stay in Vietnam, which has been extended to Saturday.
So not today, because he probably doesn't have enough time before his meeting with President Trump. But we did hear this morning the North Korean state media reporting that, revealing that Kim Jong-un would stay for 2 extra days, and it looks like he'll be doing some economic tours, as many had suggested. What do you how do you see Kim Jong-un visiting these sites and what significance that has?
Well, as we've said, we talked about this before between you and I, about the significance of Vietnam. Vietnam is one of few countries that haven't democratized. It's a communist-run state country, run by, with a strong communist party. And yet it's been able to open up and reform economically, much like China. This is one of few cases that have been successful in this way. And so it holds out as a very interesting model or an option for North Korea. And the fact that the North Koreans are taking interest in this, high-level officials, before the summit and after the summit, if Kim Jong-un does stay after that, sends a really, I think, strong signal to the United States that they're willing to play along with this carrot that the U.S. is dangling out there, that North Korea can potentially become a great economic power. I think those were the exact words used by President Trump, if they decide to denuclearize. And so what would North Korea look like if they decide to denuclearize and open up economically? Well, Kim Jong-un can see North Korea's future in the next 2 days in Vietnam.
Well, we end the discussion here for now, but Dr. Kim and Minji will be back with us at the top of the hour for further discussions as we continue our rolling coverage. Thank you so far today.
Thank you.
Thanks.